from Kansas State University. This is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Here's what's coming up. K-State's Dan O'Brien will be Mike's side to comment on the grain market trends, this week focusing on the market reaction to the EPA's latest proposal on renewable fuels volumes and on the numbers in the USDA's monthly world grain supply and demand estimates released yesterday. Then K-State's Jane Lingenfelser will report on the corn hybrids that rose to the top in K-State's 2021 Corn Hybrid Performance Test. At sites all around Kansas, the full results of this past year's field trials are now available for you growers to consider as you finalize your seed selection for planting next spring. And on Kansas agricultural weather, K-State's Chip Redmond. All that here on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today, coming to you from the campus of Kansas State University. Good to have you along once more, as is the same with our guest, Dan O'Brien, in studio this week. Dan is a grain market economist with K-State Research and Extension. Dan, we have fresh news on a couple of fronts to consider today. One of the primary things has been the decisions by the Environmental Protection Agency recently on the renewable fuels mandates and requirements there, and there has been some market reaction, maybe not as much as could have been, though.
Yeah, I don't doubt that we'll still have to wait and see all the ramifications of what's been proposed. That's sort of the approach taken by EPA, is to make a proposal for public comment and then to ratify this later. From the ag complex, at least on the corn side, it looks like EPA has proposed dropping the renewable fuel standard as opposed to corn ethanol, starch ethanol, from 15 billion gallons a year down to about 13.3, 13.4. And we have varying responses. There was a response out from a representative of the Renewable Fuels Association that rightly indicated that number does match more closely what current gasoline consumption is in the United States, more like 130 or 135, 132 billion gallons in the nation, and 10% of that's somewhere closer to this number. So, yeah, I get that. It sounds like certain political forces haven't been communicated with that. We have some palace intrigue going on in Washington between powers that be and that are elected representatives as opposed to bureaucrats in EPA. So I don't mean that in a disparaging manner, but there wasn't any communication there, and that's got some coattails all aflutter. My first thought was that it looks like we're weakening the base for survival of the ethanol plant complex we have out in the countryside. And whereas now we look at the supply-demand balance sheet for corn that came out, and we're looking at an estimate of ethanol usage for this coming marketing year of 5.250 billion bushels of corn. And, if we take 10% off of that, then you're looking at 4.5 to 4.7, 4.8 billion bushels. That's still a lot. And it does put the onus on the ethanol industry to really be proactive and aggressive in promotion of and market infiltration of 15% blends, things like that can help their businesses to survive. There is money being given from the administration, 500, 700 million, I'm not sure exact numbers, to be given directly to the ethanol industry to help them overcome COVID-related damages. There's what they giveth and what they taketh away. On that, the proposed taking away is they want to lower the renewable fuels standard for ethanol by some, approximately 10%. And that has long-term ramifications unless the ethanol industry can reformulate aggressively some of the fuel blends that are out there, and that cars can take all that. And we see that some now in pumps more than we did. Mm-hmm. So there's that aspect that they're now impelled to do, and they will have some money coming, but that money is a short-term deal, helps them to pay off debts, do whatever. But after that money goes away in 1 or 2 years, still you'll have the renewable fuel standard down about 10%. And then we'll see how corn demand, how feed grain demand going into those ethanol plants holds up.
That said, though, the markets, at least in the immediate term, took most of that in stride, the corn and bean markets for that matter.
Yeah, the latest ethanol bids that we have out of Iowa on the U.S. Daily Ethanol Report had dropped a fair amount in the last weeks from December the 3rd to December the 9th. With an average of about, say, 340, we're down 14, 18 cents in Iowa. In Kansas, we were at 307 on average for ethanol on week ending December 3rd. Here, on Thursday the 9th, we're looking at an average of 294 to 326. So not a lot of change yet. I understand the RIN market really took a hit. And you have this ongoing conflict between blenders and the ethanol industry. And in general, this is thought to be a move that wades into that ongoing conflict, and by government rules and fiat will have an impact on the game and the balance of that competition that goes on.
Well, throwing into the fray then the USDA's World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates for this month. You alluded to it just a second ago, Dan. Pretty mild response again in the corn and bean complexes to those numbers.
Virtually no change for corn and soybeans and grain sorghum on the supply-demand balance sheets. A little bit of change for wheat in that they increased the ending stocks by 15 million bushels, which is sweeping around the edges of the bins, in terms of the bigger picture of things. So in the price responses that you see on Thursday's closes, March corn, now the lead contract, D's heading rapidly towards going off the board, D's 21, up 4.5 cents for March, up 4.5 cents for May. But you get out into July, September, we're about even, losing 1 or 2 cents heading out off in the future. So really hardly any change. And for soybeans, a little bit higher, actually. And that probably follows from some of the things that we've seen in the international world supply-demand balance sheet. The ending stocks forecast for 21-22 was down 1.8 million tons. So that's a little bit of support, 2 or 3 cents. But at lofty price levels like this, that's just kind of a rounding stuff. You did see the wheat market, wheat contracts from all the way from D's 21 out to March 23 down about 15 to 15 3/4 cents.
And the wheat market's been leaking oil anyway going into this.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about what our reference price is. We view the wheat market from the perspective of the highs of almost $9 that we just reached. And we're $1 off of that, and that happened within the last 1 or 2 weeks. So we closed yesterday for Kansas City March wheat at $7.96.5. Still a tremendous price, almost $8 wheat, but it's not $9 wheat where we just were. It is interesting, too, to look at these markets in terms of what's been happening at Kansas locations. For corn, you do see cash prices for corn all across the state, except in the southeast, all above $6. The strongest area, Garden City and Hutchinson, $6.22, $6.27. These are at the major terminals at the highest prices available in that area. Columbus still good, but at $5.67. New crop bids, it's really, really interesting to watch the Garden City new crop bid at 10 over, with everything else being under by 13 to 30 cents or 25 cents across the state at these major locations. We have seen pretty strong resurgence, really, in grain sorghum cash bids in the Colby, Salina, Topeka, Hutchinson area. Really, I guess it's probably showing more of a leaning towards using feed grains for feed as opposed to exports. And the weakest cash price right now that I could see off these locations that we follow is actually out down in the Garden City area. But again, the grain sorghum that's coming to there, yeah, it'll get exported, but not as much of a train loading focus, perhaps, as we see in the Topeka, Salina, Hutchinson. Soybean prices actually below $12 for spot cash prices, $11.82, $11.95 in Garden City and Colby. Every place else we're looking at, Salina, Topeka, Hutchinson, even Columbus, all over 12. And new crop bids really pretty uniformly running from about $11.48 up to $11.93 across the state. Wheat cash prices, basis levels, just depends on where you're at, but the Salina bid at 14 under at $7.83 is identical in Topeka, identical in Hutchinson. And we've been seeing that pattern. The prices in those major terminals have been moving pretty consistently, and they've continued to. New crop bids, which, assuming people have sold their wheat, their old crop wheat, and are looking towards what they might do now as the first of the year comes around. We run from lows of 750, 751 to highs of 771, and 771 in Topeka and Hutchinson. So still tremendous wheat prices for new crop bids, but in the past, we've talked about what's behind this issue in the wheat market. We have solid wheat prices like that, but yet the wheat export pace still pretty low, 7.8 million bushels in the week ending December the 2nd, and we need about 19 million bushels a week to hit the USDA's projection. And the USDA for wheat exports did lower their projection, 20 million, from 860 down to 840 for all U.S. wheat. So we're being held up strongly in the wheat market. Maybe not so much what's happening with us, but in the whole world situation. And it's still glaring to see how the world minus China wheat stocks to use is at 21.4%, and that's the lowest by almost 1 full percentage point of anything we've seen since at least 2012. So tight world situation with some quality issues coming out of countries like Australia, and worries about military conflicts, geopolitical conflicts happening in the Black Sea region, and you have factors that are holding up that market. But it seems to be held up as much right now by worry of what could happen as the actuality of the actual export pace that we will need to see to get to the end of this marketing year out in end of May.
Always appreciate the insight, Dan. Thanks. We'll catch up with you again next Friday.
Thanks, Eric. Take care.
By the way, he pulls together those comprehensive notes on the grain markets for your review every week, producers. They can be found at agmanager.info. Does Dan O'Brien, grain market economist with K-State Research and Extension. Agriculture Today returns shortly on the K-State Radio Network. You are listening to Agriculture Today, and we're glad to have you tuned in. This is for you corn producers, the eagerly awaited information out of the K-State Department of Agronomy every year post-harvest, and that is the university's results on its corn hybrid performance trials all around the state this past growing season. Along with us is the agronomist in charge of K-State's crop performance tests, Jane Lingenfelser. Jane, first of all, we'll let folks know right out that the results from the 2021 corn trials are out there and ready for view, right?
Absolutely. They are already online. That address is agronomy. It's agronomy.ksu.edu. And the 2021 Corn Book will be printed by the Kansas State University Printing Services this year and will be available at the K-State Research and Extension Publications Library.
Multiple ways to access the numbers, and we'll repeat those a little later on. But as a table setter, we typically, Jane, talk about the conditions of the growing season leading to the test results. You call it something of a roller coaster ride, you say?
It was. The corn season this year was a roller coaster ride weather-wise. The temperature and precipitation were up and down from month to month throughout most of the growing season. These monthly fluctuations in the precipitation and temperatures meant that growing conditions and consequently the final yields and quality of the corn varied very widely across the state. There were pockets of excellent corn which could be neighbored by subpar corn or corn that had to be cut for silage. Overall, though, the USDA National Ag Statistics Service reported the average yield for the state at 140 bushels per acre, which is up 6 bushels from last year, but the statewide corn production at 742 million bushels, which is down 3% from last year.
The saving grace, though, came in the form of lesser pest pressure on this corn crop, you say.
Yeah, the one plus side to this up and down growing season is that it seemed to alleviate the disease and insect pressures. The theory is that the conditions did not stay favorable long enough for diseases to get established and get to economic thresholds. There were moderate amounts of the usual Kansas suspects: gray leaf spot, bacterial leaf streak, southern rust, Diploidia ear rot, and stalk rots, which developed late in the season, but no disease really stood out as a main concern for 2021. The same was true for insects, according to Jeff Whitworth of K-State Entomology. There were the usual spider mite problems in the western half of Kansas, and the populations of Japanese beetles now extend across 2/3 of the state, moving from east to west. But again, in 2021, these caused more concern than actual damage.
That is the backdrop. Let's go then to the breakdown on the test results region by region in the state. And to remind, you were mentioning just some of the highlighted hybrids in terms of their performance in these locations.
Yes, I'll mention a few hybrids that performed well in a particular location, but this is by no means the total list of hybrids that yielded well. And I'd also like to send a thank you to Beck's, Pioneer, and DeKalb for supplying the maturity check hybrids this year. And I will start with the Northeast Dryland region, which is Manhattan in Riley County. The overall average yield for Manhattan this year was 230 bushels, and the hybrids that did well in Manhattan were Beck's 6282 AM, Dynagro D51SS61, Lewis 14DD849, and the full season hybrid from Pioneer all did well in Manhattan.
In the dryland tests for Northeast Kansas, you also had more than one irrigated site in the Northeast.
That's right. It was at Ashland Bottoms, also in Riley County. And the average for the irrigated trial in Riley County was 233 bushels. And hybrids that did well here, Beck's 5909 AM and 6282 AM and 6414 V2P did well. Also, Lewis 16 DP887 and 16 DP850 from Beck's did well. And the full season hybrid from Pioneer also did well at Ashland Bottoms in Riley County. We also had Scandia in Republic County. The average for Scandia was 217 bushels, and hybrids that did well, Lewis 16 DP850 and 14 DD849 did well. Also, Golden Harvest G13 and 18 did well at Scandia. And we had a third location in Silver Lake in Shawnee County. The average at Silver Lake was 242 bushels, and hybrids that did well, DeKalb DKC 6595, Dynacro D52 DC82, and Midland 662 TRE did well in Silver Lake.
Well, slipping just a bit to the south and east, you had trials for dryland in what you're calling eastern Kansas.
Yes, we had Ottawa in Franklin County. The average at Ottawa was 159 bushels, and hybrids that did well, NK 1354 did well, also Beck's 6414 V2P, and DeKalb DKC 6595 did well at Ottawa. We also had Cairo in Shawnee County. The average at Cairo was 224 bushels, and hybrids that did well, Lewis 16 DP850 and 15 DP899 did well. Also, NK 1284 did well in the east central dryland location.
Southeast Kansas, you had a dryland test that we should plug in.
Yes, we had Parsons in Labette County. The average overall at Parsons was 131 bushels, and hybrids did well. In these saturated soils, Lewis 14DD849, Golden Harvest G13N18, DeKalb DKC 6595, and our full season check from Pioneer did well in southeast Kansas.
All right, Jane, tell us then how the numbers read in your central Kansas trials, both dryland and irrigated, at a couple of sites.
Yeah, we had a test in north central Kansas in Belleville in Republic County. The average at Belleville was 218 bushels. Hybrids that did well, DeKalb DKC 6595 and DKC 5982. Also Midland 570 PR and Beck's 5765 AM did well at Belleville. And we had an irrigated trial in central Kansas in Abilene and Dickinson County. The average at Abilene was 269 bushels. And hybrids that did well, Lewis 15 DP 899 and 16 DP 850, Bex 6282 AM, Dynagrow D58 VC 65, and NK 1354 did well at the irrigated trial in central Kansas.
Now to western Kansas, the dryland trials. 2 sites there. What did they tell us?
Colby in Thomas County will not be reported today. Hopefully I can do that with our sorghum review later on. Sure. But we had Hayes in Ellis County. The average at Hayes was 125 bushels, and hybrids that did well in Hayes, Bex 5909, Golden Harvest G13N18. Again, our full season check from Pioneer did well at Hayes. And we also had irrigated trials in western Kansas. We had Leote in Wichita County. The average at Leote was 197 bushels. And hybrids that did well, Bex 5909 AM and 5765 AM did well. Also, Dynagrow D48 QV22. We had a third location at Garden City in Finney County that had to be abandoned for uneven stands. And we did have a trial at Colby in Thomas County, and hopefully those yields will be available very soon.
Those will be passed along to producers quite shortly. But that, to remind, is just a summary of some of those lead hybrids that showed up well in the test this year. You want producers to really scrutinize this and all the other data available to them heading into 2022, Jane.
Absolutely. As always, I would encourage producers to look at a variety of sources and locations and years of data to find the product that fits best with their own conditions and management. And the list of all hybrids and seed treatments provided by the companies, along with growing degree days, herbicide disease, and insect resistance traits, will be included in the 2021 book. That book will be printed by the KSRE Bookstore Printing Services and will be available in local extension offices. But in the meantime, the results for the individual locations can be found at agronomy, that's agronomy.ksu.edu on the Crop Performance website.
Very well. Well, Jane, you are now tying off the final details on the grain sorghum performance trials for 2021, and we'll have you back quite soon as you finish that up to go over those results as well. Until then, thanks for getting into the corn hybrid performance data with us right here.
Well, thanks for having me.
And she is the agronomist in charge of K-State's crop performance tests. That's Jane Lingenfelser. We'll have more for you on Agriculture Today. To close out this Agriculture Today, it's to the Kansas agricultural weather scene and the latest update from Chip Redmond, meteorologist with K-State Research and Extension. We look back at this past week, Chip, and it's not terribly different from what we've been discussing for quite a few weeks now. Generally devoid of moisture around the state, wasn't it?
Yeah, we're growing our precipitation deficits. Granted, we're approaching the driest time of the year for much of the state. But over the last 2 weeks, we've gathered as much as 0.2 of an inch of rain in the west and as much as an inch of moisture in the east, deficits. No rain's fallen anywhere in the state. And, that's really been compiled with the warmer temperatures. In fact, I crunched a few numbers last night. And since Thanksgiving until December 4th, so this is ending about a week ago, we broke 111 daily warm temperatures records across the state. So 111 records were broken with warm temperatures, and we factor that into the persistent dry conditions. We start to see increased moisture demands from the atmosphere, and even little things like I've noticed recently, at least in the Manhattan area, as well as much of the east, we haven't seen dew or frost most mornings, and that's because we're staying so warm at night with either cloud cover or breezy winds that we're not getting as cold at night as we typically do either. And so we're actually seeing a little bit of a negative feedback of the dry conditions play into our daily weather.
Is this being reflected, as we always ask, in the drought monitor of late?
Yeah, this week was mostly status quo. Those deficits are growing, but they're growing at a slow rate. I expect in the coming weeks, if we do continue this dryness, and especially the warmth, that we'll see additional growth. But this week, mostly status quo for the whole state, some minor changes, very, very minor changes in moderate drought in the southeast and the southwest. But like I mentioned, it not mostly status quo this week.
As you say, though, Chip, it's been warmer than normal, although in recent days there seems to be a give and take where the temperatures will be somewhat on the warmer side and then cooling off considerably for the next day and then rebounding in the subsequent days. Are we in a pattern that's going to hold like that for a while, do you think?
Yeah, we're in the battleground right now. We have cooler temperatures to our north and west. We look even up into northwest Canada and Alaska. Very, very cold air is sitting up there. They've hit negative 50 degrees below Fahrenheit up there, and they're much below normal. And then to our south and east, and they're really above normal temperature-wise. So we kind of fall in that battleground where we get dry, cold frontal passages that give us a glimpse of winter, or at least late fall, but then we rebound quickly with the warmer temperatures. Over the next week, that transition zone is actually going to shift to our north and west, and we're going to see even warmer temperatures next week. We're talking 15 to 20 degrees above average next week, and that's not a good sign. In fact, the Climate Prediction Center's put an 80 to 90% chance in favor of warmer than normal temperatures. That's almost unprecedented.
And not accompanied by much in the way of moisture.
Yeah, unfortunately, these are dry, cold fronts. We're just not able to tap into that Gulf moisture, our source region for precipitation in Kansas. And as a result, we've actually are going to see winds increase, too, and that's a concern. Mm-hmm. Many areas across the state are 30 to 60 days without a wetting rain or a tenth of an inch. So our grasses are really, really dried out. And with these dry frontal passages and winds associated with them, we're going to see an uptick in fire danger as well. We're going to see elevated fire weather concerns into early next week, and then likely another period of critical fire weather middle of next week for much of the state.
Folks, please remain heads up about that potential threat as we roll through this dry spell. Chip, thank you. And next week we'll talk again. Take care.
Sounds great. Thank you.
That's Chip Redmond, meteorologist with K-State Research and Extension on Kansas agricultural weather. And that is our time for the day and the week. Thanks to you for being along with us. Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.